the things that the deacons of our church used to do. We don't do it anymore because we tend to have very peaceful meetings now. But one of the things that we used to do was to make sure that we had recorded the deacons' meeting, so if we needed to go back and make sure that we needed clarification on the minutes or something that had gone on, that we could find a way to do that. We could go back and make sure we could clarify what needed to be done. And what you may not have known is that there's an imaginary Sunday school class here at Central Baptist Church that has recorded their Sunday school lessons. And so I want to give you a little bit of insight, and listen, imagine this is being recorded from a Sunday school class that takes place in room 825 over in Marshall Building. Okay, class, it looks like everyone has donuts and coffee. That's a Central Baptist thing, right? Let's take a seat and we'll get class started. Open your Bibles, please, to the book of John and look up chapter 13, and I'm going to read from verses 1 through 15. Follow along with me. Now, before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Jesus answered, You do not know now what I am doing, but later you will understand. Peter said to him, You will never wash my feet. Jesus answered, Unless I wash you, you have no share with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. Jesus said to him, One who is bathed does not need to wash, except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you. For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, Not all of you are clean. After he had washed their feet, he had put on his robe and had returned to the table and said to them, Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you as an example, that you should also do as I have done to you. Okay, guys, let's take a little bit of time and learn about the background of this story. Washing feet was a pretty regular practice at that time. It was something that servants did when someone came home from the day's work. Remember that the roads at that time were dirt and dust, so feet got pretty dirty. I'm sure it was no fun for the servant. But if you were not wealthy enough to have a servant, you had to wash your feet yourself. Think about it for just a minute. There's another story where foot washing takes place. Can anyone remember that story? Jennifer?
The scene where the woman washed Jesus' feet with her hair and with her tears?
Yes, that's right. And that time it took place in the home of one of the Pharisees. It was a powerful moment because it was so unexpected. And when it happened, everyone realized that this woman willingly placed herself in the role of a very lowly servant. So when Jesus gathered with his disciples that night, he must have known that the disciples would remember what the woman had done. What do you think that Jesus was trying to teach them when he took off his cloak and began to wash their feet.
I think the first thing he was teaching them was that it's important to be a servant. I mean, Jesus could not have been any more obvious in what he was doing. Taking off his cloak took away any status he might have had with the group. It seems to me he was clearly taking the role of a servant.
That's right, Susan. That's a good point about Jesus taking off his cloak. He was not just trying to keep a garment clean. He was sending them a message. Something like this. This thing that I'm doing, it's an act of service. If I'm willing to be your servant, you need to be willing to be servants of one another. Are there any other signs that Jesus saw this as an act of service?
Think about the position he had to be in to wash their feet. He had to place himself below them. I can see Jesus now looking up at them and then at their feet and washing them thoroughly.
That's a good point, Tom.
Picking up on that, he had to be down on his knees, which meant he was willing to get himself dirty so that they could be clean. That's pretty amazing.
And that's pretty